The Winter Olympics, unlike its summer counterpart, continues to be dominated by athletes from wealthy countries. And the reason is not talent. It is access. Recent international reporting shows that most competitors and medal winners consistently come from high-income nations. This pattern reflects a deeper reality. Winter sports success is tied directly to national wealth and infrastructure. Reuters analysis shows that athletes from high-income countries make up the overwhelming majority of Winter Olympic participants, while representation from upper-middle, lower-middle, and low-income nations remains extremely small. This imbalance is not new. Historical medal data, examined by major international outlets, has repeatedly shown that rich countries win most Winter Olympic medals year after year. The reasons are structural. Winter sports demand costly environments, expensive gear, and year-round access to snow and ice. Disciplines such as alpine skiing, bobsleigh, luge, skeleton, and snowboard halfpipe require high-level coaching, specialized equipment, and constant travel to competitive circuits. For many athletes, the cost starts immediately. Even basic equipment like skis, boots, helmets, and goggles can reach thousands of dollars. Then comes lift access, training camps, and international travel. For sliding sports, the cost increases even further because sleds alone can cost thousands, and access to tracks is limited to a small number of countries. Meanwhile, wealthier nations often provide support through national federations, government funding, or private sponsorship. They also have established pipelines, youth programs, and domestic leagues that continuously develop athletes. In contrast, athletes from poorer nations often face a simple problem. There is no snow, no ice, no facilities, and no funding. Training abroad becomes the only option, but that requires money and connections. So while the Olympic ideal claims universality, winter sport economics create an uneven playing field, and that imbalance shapes almost every competition. The Winter Olympics remains one of the most expensive sporting events for athletes to enter because winter sports require more than skill. They require geography, climate, and constant access to specialized facilities. Unlike running or football, winter sports cannot be practiced in most of the world. Snow and ice are seasonal, unevenly distributed, and often completely absent in tropical nations. For athletes in those regions, even learning the basics becomes difficult. International reporting highlights how expensive winter sport participation can be. Alpine skiing is a prime example. It demands high-quality skis, boots, bindings, helmets, body armor, and competition suits. Even before coaching, travel, and resort fees, athletes may already be spending thousands. Then there are sliding sports like skeleton and bobsleigh. These disciplines are even more restricted. Competitive sleds can cost several $1,000s, and the tracks required are rare, expensive, and artificially refrigerated. Maintaining these tracks costs millions, which is why they exist mainly in wealthy countries. This creates a system where training is not only expensive, but geographically locked. Athletes from developing nations often must relocate to Europe or North America to train. That means paying for housing, transport, coaching, equipment shipping, and competition travel. Even if a country has mountains, it may still lack ski lifts, grooming systems, safety infrastructure, or international-level coaching. Many nations with occasional snowfall simply do not have the facilities required to produce elite athletes. Meanwhile, competitive experience is concentrated in countries with strong winter sport calendars. World Cup circuits, qualifying events, and training camps are often held in the same wealthy regions. That means athletes who already live there get more exposure and more race experience. Some international federations provide limited scholarships, but the number of athletes helped is small compared to the size of the global Olympic field. So the barriers remain clear. Winter sport is not only expensive, it is location-dependent. And because climate and wealth overlap, the Winter Olympics remains an arena built mostly for nations that can afford the environment. When Winter Olympic participation is measured over time, the trend is consistent. Wealthy countries dominate not only medal counts, but also the size of delegations. International Olympic reporting shows that high-income nations send far more athletes to the Games than lower-income nations, and they do so across a wide range of disciplines. Meanwhile, poorer countries often send only 1 or 2 athletes, sometimes through wild-card qualification pathways. The medal gap is even more dramatic. Historical analysis from international data outlets has shown that most Winter Olympic medals are won by a relatively small group of rich nations. These countries typically have long traditions in winter sport and strong domestic programs. The explanation is simple. Success in winter sport is cumulative. Countries that already have infrastructure continue producing talent because they have youth academies, national training centers, and deep coaching systems. They also invest in technology, performance science, and equipment development. In winter sport, equipment matters more than in many summer sports. The difference between a medal and a mid-level finish can depend on ski tuning, aerodynamics, wax quality, sled design, and precision training on professional tracks. These advantages require money. This is why countries with lower GDP per capita rarely appear on the podium. Even when athletes from less wealthy nations qualify, they often lack the depth of preparation needed to compete against athletes who have trained on world-class courses since childhood. The contrast with the Summer Olympics is striking. In summer sports, countries with limited wealth can still achieve major success in athletics, boxing, wrestling, or football because training environments are accessible and equipment costs are lower. But winter sports require snow, ice, and specialized venues. This pushes competition toward countries where these conditions are normal and where the public can't afford winter recreation. The result is a Winter Olympics that remains heavily unequal, not because poorer nations lack talent, but because the system rewards those who can train more, travel more, and spend more. Representation exists, but competitive parity remains rare. Occasionally, the Winter Olympics produces stories of athletes representing nations with little winter sport history. These athletes capture global attention, but their journeys often reveal how difficult it is for poorer countries to develop winter sport systems. International reporting frequently highlights athletes who qualify for the Games through unusual paths. Many train abroad, live in wealthier countries, or hold dual nationality. Some were raised or adopted in countries where winter sport is common. Others gained access through foreign coaching networks or private funding. Reuters, for example, referenced cases like Maya Lishiana Clerc, an alpine skier born in Madagascar and adopted by a French family, who learned to ski in France and later represented Madagascar internationally. Stories like this demonstrate that global representation is possible, but often depends on external resources rather than domestic development. These cases show that talent can emerge anywhere. But without infrastructure, talent cannot easily become Olympic-level skill. Athletes require constant access to snow and ice, and most importantly, years of competition experience against elite opponents. These stories also highlight a broader reality. Winter sport is often tied to privilege, even within rich countries. International studies show that winter sport participation is higher among wealthier social groups. Skiing, snowboarding, and ice sports require travel, equipment, and leisure time. This means even in developed nations, the athlete pool is shaped by socioeconomic class. In developing nations, that divide is even more extreme. Governments often prioritize essential public needs over building ski resorts or ice tracks. Without national investment, federations remain small and underfunded. Some international programs aim to expand access, but these efforts rarely create full competitive systems. They may help one athlete reach qualification, but not build a pipeline of future champions. So while these individual stories are inspiring, they also prove the larger point. Without long-term resources, global winter sport equality remains out of reach. The exceptions exist, but the system remains unchanged. The future of the Winter Olympics is increasingly tied to a global debate about equity, representation, and access. International coverage has shown growing awareness that winter sport remains dominated by wealthy countries, limiting the Olympic ideal of global inclusion. One major discussion focuses on shared training access. Some experts and Olympic officials have proposed expanding international training hubs where athletes from less wealthy nations can practice in established winter sport environments. These hubs could reduce the financial burden of relocating permanently and provide coaching and competitive exposure. Another solution involves equipment support. Since winter sports demand expensive gear, some proposals suggest that international federations or Olympic programs should subsidize equipment, coaching, and travel for athletes from underrepresented countries. This would lower the entry barrier, especially in sports where gear costs are the biggest obstacle. There is also discussion about alternative development pathways using technology. Synthetic ice rinks and dry slope ski facilities have been used in some regions without natural snow. While these cannot fully replicate real Olympic conditions, they can introduce youth athletes to winter sport fundamentals and help develop early skill. International commentators also stress the importance of visibility. When athletes from non-traditional winter sport nations appear at the Olympics, it can inspire new participation at home. Representation can influence national interest, sponsorship opportunities, and youth development. However, challenges remain. Hosting the Winter Olympics itself is costly. Even wealthy nations have raised concerns about the financial burden of building venues that may not be widely used afterward. This has led to broader debates about sustainability and whether the Games can expand globally without becoming financially unrealistic. The reality is that winter sport inequality is deeply rooted. Climate, infrastructure, and funding shape the competitive field. But growing attention to these disparities suggests that the Olympic movement is under pressure to adapt. If international partnerships, equipment programs, and training support expand, more nations may eventually compete seriously, not just participate. But without long-term investment, the Winter Olympics will likely remain what it has been for decades, a global event dominated by rich countries.